Good evening. I'd like to call this board meeting to order. Today is October the 18th, 2022, and I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to this meeting. The public is encouraged and welcome to address the school board at the hearing of citizen, and we will call you forward at the appropriate time for that. I'd like to introduce to my left, all the way at the end, Earl Richards. Earl is a senior at Northport High School, and Earl will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you stand with me, if you are able, as the Northport High School JROTC, under the direction of Lieutenant Commander D. Barnes, presides over our salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I said, our student representative tonight is from Northport High School. His name is Earl Richards. And Earl, I'd like to welcome you. I just handed Earl a certificate in appreciation of his visit with us. And I'd like if you would please take a few minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're studying and what your future plans might be.
Hi, I'm Earl Richards. I'm a senior at Northport High School. There, I'm vice president of the Technological Student Association. It's a club based off of STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. There, I'm also a captain of our varsity swim team alongside my good friend Madison Mong. I'm a big member in our basketball community over in Northport, and I spend a lot of time playing in our local recreational league. And I work as a lifeguard at the city of Northport over at our aquatic center right next to the Morgan Family Community Center. After high school, I want to go to the University of Central Florida and work as a dermatologist with my own private practice afterwards. Thank you.
Could you please tell us a little bit about Character Strong and the trait that we have for October?
Yes, ma'am. So, the Character Strong trait for the month of October is kindness. But when you think about it, what is kindness really? Is it reaching out to a friend when they need help? Is it uplifting our new swimmers after a race instead of breaking them down? Is it lending parts to an opposing school so they can rebuild their robot? Is it the quality of character that we should all have? In the wise words of Matthew Arnold, it is this and the other things. Kindness is the quality of being friendly, generous, and considerate. In Northport, I feel the beam of kindness everywhere, especially at Northport High School. Every year I spent on campus, I felt the warmth and love of the staff. My sophomore year, I was a remote student, but the kindness of teachers like Ms. Gural and Ms. Stringer helped me to succeed through tough times. Ms. Gural was adaptive and she was thoughtful. She always gave good advice when I needed it, and her due dates were always flexible to help us in those trying times. Ms. Stringer was persistent and inclusive. She always made sure we understood everything and made us feel included. And to me, those were acts of true kindness. My junior year, I met one of my favorite teachers ever in Dr. Jennings. I connected with her really well, and I felt like every time I walked into her classroom, it was going to be an amazing day. There was no bad days when you had Dr. Jennings as your first period teacher, and I really felt like I connected with her. Every day I walked into class, Dr. Jennings knew how to view me as not only a student, but as someone with budding potential. It was amazing, and I really appreciate everything that she's done for us. Sorry. She embraced my personality, my loud voice, and my hunger for knowledge. She taught me a lot about art and Photoshop, which are skills that I still use to this very day. Dr. Jennings was not just nice to me, though. She was nice to everyone. Everyone felt safe in her classroom, and there was not a moment where I didn't feel welcomed. Now, I want you to think. With her kindness, how can we pay it forward? And that's what we have to think about when we think about kindness. With someone like Dr. Jennings, there is no amount of kindness that I, as one person, can give to amount to what she has given to us. But that will not stop me from trying. And this year, I've made some very strong connections in the guidance department. Although it started last year with my guidance counselors, Miss McKay and Miss Kaiser, who helped me understand what I wanted to do as a career and helped me to focus on one field in dermatology. But this year, it extended to people like Mrs. Sims, Miss Rutherford, and Mrs. McKeith. They're always open to listen, even though they may not be your assigned guidance counselor. They're always here to help us when we have our own problems. And with people like Mrs. Rutherford and Miss Kaiser working together as counselors, there's not a problem I haven't had that they couldn't solve. But we don't just see kindness in our schools. We see kindness everywhere, in the streets, in the parks, and in our pools. At the Morgan Community Family Center, we have a very positive environment to play and learn about basketball. And although we get our fair share of rotten eggs, it's always fun to pick up a ball there. I've learned a lot from playing there. So many long days of my favorite sport, people of all ages. And the older guys are always so kind. One in particular, his name is JJ. He always goes out of his way to help the younger players, the players who are unexperienced. But he's not opposed to you approaching him and asking for help. He's an amazing mentor to me and all the younger players. His kindness speaks volumes. At swim meets, there is no such thing as negative energy. Everyone is always so happy and full of smiles. The winners are always kind and congratulate the loser no matter what the outcome. No matter how big the gap in skill, they're always kind. My best memory of this was against a lemon-based swimmer my junior year. A race between myself and Joey Sacco. He was one of the best swimmers from Lemon Bay that year. We got up on the blocks, took our marks, and dove in head first. The gap in our skill was great, and he was definitely better. He swam the 50 free in 22 seconds and was out of the water and dry before I could even finish. I was disappointed with my performance, even though I dropped time in my event. But afterwards, Joey came up to me and said, "It just takes practice. You'll be a great swimmer." So I did. I took his kindness to heart. I worked hard and practiced nonstop. Not because I wanted to beat Joey, but because I wanted to be like him. I wanted my kindness to inspire somebody else to chase their dreams. But I think the freshmen I've been placed in charge of this year have helped me get my wish. That year, the hard work I put in ended up helping our relay team make it to the regional meet, a place I hope we can go again this year. So, I hope you all have heard the kindness we see in Northport, but not just the kindness we see in Northport. I hope you can see the kindness that Northport sees everywhere. Thank you.
What wonderful, wonderful discussion and talk that you gave, Earl. I really appreciate it. I think everyone got at least one thing, if not more, from what you said. And I think there is something very special about Northport. and I think the storm has only enhanced that, if I may. And so we're thinking about Northport. They're in our thoughts and prayers because there's still a long road ahead. But thanks for this positiveness, and thank you to being here with us today, because I know you're going to be successful. You'll be a great dermatologist. You have to have a good personality to be a dermatologist. So I want to hear more about you and what happens. But thank you. Best of luck, and enjoy your senior year. Hard to pass that by, but next up we have some very special presentations. Tonight we're going to talk a bit about the hurricane effort, and tonight's presentation will be focused on the hurricane effort. Would Mr. Jody Dumas, our Chief Operating Officer, please come forward to the podium to start the presentation. Jody will have a brief overview of the hurricane efforts and thank all those that have participated in sheltering.
Well, thank you so much. Obviously, this is an awesome opportunity to spend a few minutes just reflecting on the past couple of weeks as a school district and our response to Hurricane Ian. As I think back over the course of the hurricane, you know, there were really three phases to the hurricane, and or to any event like that, and that is kind of our planning and our run up to the hurricane, where we're doing things like making sure we got staff in place at all of our shelter sites, making sure that grounds and everything are picked up and prepared, buildings are prepared, making sure food services got staff in place at all the shelters, making sure we got custodial staff in place at all the shelters, making sure transportation's ready to go to transport special needs, start the transport of special needs patients into our special needs shelters, our medically dependent shelters, and so there was a lot of activity going on up front to make sure we got staff in place, communicating with EOC, just making sure there's a coordinated effort across the district. That all starts at the top, really, with leadership with Dr. Asplin and working very closely with the EOC. I have to say, and I think everybody would echo this, he was there every step of the way with us, morning, noon, and night, throughout the event, throughout all three phases of the event. As we got into that initial phase, we got people in place. We got into the hurricane event where we had shelters open. We had all 14 shelters open across the district. And so as you're sheltering, the people we got in place, from principals to APs to district administrators, all of our shelter sites, they plan for it and they kind of train for it, and they think through kind of their experiences in the past. But at the end of the day, there are things going on in shelters that as leaders, they just need to respond to, and people pick up and run with ideas and make things happen and take care of people. That's the thing I'm the most proud of as we're sitting there monitoring radio all night long, is the amount of care that's going into taking care of these guests in our shelters throughout the event. And it was a long, extended event this time. It seemed like that eye would never move and never get through kind of our area. And so during the event, those are the types of things that are going on. And now we're kind of in that phase of after the event, and that is making sure that our buildings, doing the evaluations of all our buildings. That's facility services, that's construction. That's then taking a look at the kind of damages we have and bringing contractors in to help, bringing community members in to help, bringing all those resources to bear, making sure our insurance programs are in place, making sure finance is getting all the information together for payroll, and we're paying people who have worked in accordance with what we need to pay them with. What I'm trying to paint for you is a picture of several weeks of an organization that came together and just worked flawlessly to make sure we did our best for the community. And I'm very, very proud all the time to work in Sarasota County Schools, but I've never been so proud as I look back on these last few weeks of Hurricane Ian, and say, this team that you have as Sarasota County Schools did an amazing job. Whether we're talking about some heroes that we're going to honor tonight, principals, APs, district administrators, our executive directors who were bouncing around from school to school to school and relaying issues to the other teams to kind of follow up on. It was an amazing, coordinated effort where you literally had heroes handling emergencies 24 hours a day as the event was going on. And as we transition out of that event, the responsibilities kind of shift over. And so we'll be dealing for months in the school district with the effects of Hurricane Ian, where there's insurance coordinating all that through Lynn Peterson, our finance department. But then truly now principals and APs and teachers and staff at schools, thank God, we're finally open. We've got all of our schools open as of today, and all of our kids are back on campus. But it's providing that support in terms of, what did these kids experience at home? This was a traumatic event, and so that counseling, all of our counselors coming together to make sure kids are transitioning back into the educational environment in a positive way and be able to provide that support. So it is an amazing effort from that pre-planning stage all up to getting kids back on campus and the follow-through. That I am super proud to be part of, and just want you to know that we could spend the next year and a half recognizing the heroes in this district who went above and beyond, worked beyond their scope of responsibility 24, 32, 50 hours straight to make sure we were doing our best for the community. So very humbled to be able to talk about that a little bit tonight. With that, I want to point out and move forward in the presentation. Before we do, I want to point out a couple of people that I want to recognize tonight that were keys in that. I'll call these our quarterbacks at the EOC. And there are 3 of them here tonight. And Roy Sprinkle is here, who just did an amazing job in terms of coordinating with the EOC 24 hours a day. And then we had Chief Oakes over there, was kind of his partner over there at the EOC. And then Captain Lorenz, who's outside in the lobby, was also part of that team at the EOC. And really, from a staging perspective and coordinating with the EOC and making sure we were doing what we need to do, those gentlemen absolutely were calm on the radio, supportive to what was going on, finding answers for us when we needed resources. And so that was an amazing effort, and all 3 of those guys are absolutely heroes. I'm going to ask Chief Oakes to kind of come up and recognize some additional people from the Safety and Security Police Department. And then Roy Sprinkle is going to come up and recognize some heroes in our Transportation Department. Really what I'm trying to paint for you is that we have awesome people who work in this district and continue to impress and go above and beyond the call. And very, very proud of each and every one of them. So with that, Chief Oakes.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you for having me here tonight. I just want to point out that everything Jody said was exactly right. And at the EOC, Roy Sprinkle was awesome. Never slept the entire time. So if anybody at the EOC needs any credit, it's Roy. But tonight, I just wanted to explain to you what we're doing as a Safety and Security Department. So as a team, we're designing a unit citation. It's the ribbons that we wear on our uniforms. And we're going to issue the entire department, Safety and Security Department, including all the civilian employees that work with us. That includes Jason Overbay and his men, Sean O'Keefe, men and women, and Sean O'Keefe and all his employees, everybody within the entire realm of safety and security, because they spent, whether it was pre, during, or post event, many, many hours on top of the officers that were in the shelters working hand in hand with everybody that was in the shelters. Once again, just like everybody else, I know everybody made sacrifices. The officers spent hours, days without sleep. So I need to recognize everybody, including everybody that supported our efforts across the board. So that's what we're doing. I don't have a picture rendition of the ribbon yet, but once I get them, we will be giving them out to every one of our safety and security employees. So, and next I'll have Roy Sprinkle come up. I am. All right.
Dr. Asplin, board members, Earl, welcome. I'm so glad to see Northport High represented here tonight. I was lucky enough to be one of the 4 administrators that opened that school a few years ago. So the others are long gone. I'm still here trying to get this done. But it's an amazing place. I have a lot of friends there, and it really tugged at my heart to see what was happening at Northport, and happy that we could be a part of it and try to get things going best we could during the storm and get things up and running. I had the opportunity to spend 8 days in the EOC before, during, and after Hurricane Ian with Chief Oakes sitting right next to me. He was an amazing partner throughout the entire process. During this time, we were able to witness hundreds of people putting the others' needs in front of their own. But I felt that one situation especially deserved recognition, and a lot of them are here tonight. Thursday morning after the storm had passed, it was a beautiful day. At least I was told it was that. We can't see anything from inside the bunker. But we were getting warnings of rising waters, especially in the Northport area. That morning I received a text from Troy Thompson, a picture of a switch gearbox at Lamarck, which housed our medically fragile At that time, we were around 385 people at Mark, 267 of which were medically fragile individuals, along with their caregivers. Most of these individuals were elderly and needed oxygen, which means they have an elaborate generator placed there, because if shelter ever loses power, they would have a short period of time before they need to receive help or face the possibility of death. The problem with the Mark is that there are only two really entrances into the Mark from each side, and we'd already known that one of these was blocked due to high water. If we lost access to Lamarck, the generator failed, we would not be able to get the residents out on time. If you can imagine, this is a 6,000-gallon tank that goes on this generator. If that switch box was to blow or catch fire, you can only imagine what that damage could happen. It was at that time we gathered in the Situation Room at the EOC to make a decision whether to evacuate Lamarck. I was surrounded by Northport Fire, police, county officers, state police, state water rescue, air rescue. I even went out and asked the National Guard to join us. It was decided that the best evacuation would be to use school transportation due to the fact that they're high water buses. They're much higher than our SCAT buses, which were unusable. They were there for support, but they just couldn't get in and out. Unfortunately, there were also a plan A and a plan B, which would involve high water vehicles, boats, airlifts. Unfortunately, these were not real options, as the individuals were elderly in wheelchairs, and this type of evacuation would take far too long and too much time. We needed to get them out now. That's when I contacted Gary Donahue and had him start calling up our drivers. Let's get them in here as fast as we can. We need to make this work. Water's rising about an inch every hour. Gary was nothing short of incredible. As 75 was closed and River Road was closed, we had limited options. We were given a clear route, and our buses headed that way. Now it gets really ugly, unfortunately. Everything that went wrong, could have went wrong, did go wrong. As they were approaching, they found out that the water was a little too high. I got a radio call, I think it might have been Simon, that said the water is up to the mailboxes. So they were put on hold. We get the maps back out. We start looking at other routes. We thought this was our only route. As we're talking amongst ourselves, of course, the drivers that know the area much better than anyone else say, hey, I think I know a route we can get around this. Go, go, go. So they back it up. They start down another route. Next thing I think we ran into was there's a car floated into the middle of the road. So we're stuck once again, trying to figure out we can get it towed out, get a military vehicle in there, get something to happen. By the time we can get it figured out, they'd already figured out another route to get around to go, go, go. So they were pulling out so many times they could have said, no, we just can't do this. At one point on the radio, as I'm anxiously awaiting them to get there, Simon comes back and I think he says, the bus water's up to my first step. But they kept going. And then I hear a passionate yell of stop from behind him because there was a power line hanging about to hit the top of his bus. But I believe Gary got out and said, no, I think you got a good foot or so to clear. Go ahead. Go, go, go. So these guys kept going. They just kept going and kept finding a way. And we finally got our buses there. Another hard part is this is a massive amount of people with a lot of stuff, wheelchairs, oxygen. It takes a long time to get them on these buses. We got them on the buses finally with the help of the National Guard, which was extremely helpful at that time. So glad we called them in. On the buses, ready to roll, and I'm standing next to Northport Police, and we get the call that Price Road is closed as a bridge that's been compromised. My question is, who closed the bridge? So they get on the radio and they finally said, well, the lieutenants drove over it and said it was unstable. We need to close it. I said, I get that. Under normal situation, I would agree. We got to make decisions here of what's going to be the worst of the two evils. So drive something heavy over. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So they did. They held it open for us. We got them over that bridge. Then the next thing, we get a call from the police saying there's a sinkhole. We got to stop. Everybody's got to go back. We can't at this point. We cannot go back. Actually, Northport Fire and police then blocked off the road, rerouted everybody, and gave us a police escort out of there at this point. So we were able to get those buses rolling. And this whole time, this water is rising. So we're coming in at a point where it's too high to come in and trying to get them out of there loaded. So it was, I can't even describe everything that went on because it was just too much. But we got them rolling. We got them out of there. I think it was 8 o'clock that night. I finally got at our meeting and announced to the room that we got them all out safely. They clapped, and about 5 minutes later, Tatum calls and says their generator just failed. So I said, you've got to be kidding me. So at that point, I knew they were in a safe place, though. We could always get fire and rescue there. We had to get people there. We could get another generator there. We could. So with that said, I mean, I don't know what a hero is, but if someone who refuses to quit and someone who just keeps going and going to put others' lives in front of their own, I think that's a hero. So we've got these guys. Thank you. As I call your name, could you please come up and then remain up here, because I think we're going to want to get a picture of all of you, please. Kara Bagley, Mary Blocker, John Botero, Dwight Brown, Brian Buchanan, Mira Buttram, Amina Carley, Teresa Clark, Peter Del Pizzo, Gary Donahue, Lori Donahue, Rachel Doster, Thomas Higgins, Tammy Johnson, James Mailing, Simon Nelson, Lynn Reed, Sunita Robinson, Susan Schlabach, Lisa Stevens, Tamika Winder, and Wendy York. You were out of line. I just want to say, while we're bringing all them up, these guys, again, went way above and beyond, but I can't tell you how many people in the 8 days I was there at the EOC that did way above and beyond what they needed to do to make things happen, to keep people safe, to keep people comfortable. The volunteers that poured in, the community support that poured in, it was amazing. It's Sarasota, it's Northport, it's Venice, it's all of our communities coming together, and it was a truly moving experience, I think, for everyone involved.
Charlotte, our Director of Transportation, come on up too with your team.
Jody, come on up. Chief?
Like I say, if you can't see me, I can't see you, right? Okay, everybody say transportation. Perfect, thank you.
So obviously our transportation department did a wonderful job. And Gary, I don't want Gary to leave for a second. So as I talked at the start of this thing, it's just throughout this countless examples of going above and beyond. It wasn't long after this all happened. We also had, and this is an example of also thinking on the spot, being able to lead throughout the crisis and kind of just jumping back and doing whatever you got to do. We had the Northport generator running out of fuel. And obviously in the middle of the storm, you can't get fuel anywhere. Gary calls me and says, I can take care of that. He actually ran down. They grabbed buses from our compound, fuel from everywhere else they could. They ran it back to Northport High. They pumped fuel out of the buses into the generator at Northport High to keep them running all night long. And that was in deeper water at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And that was Gary Donahue right there. So. So again,
We actually drained it 5 gallons at a time. 300 gallons, 5 gallons at a time.
so as you can see, and again, we recognize a few groups tonight that I'm so proud of recognizing, but again, from principals to APs to teachers to everybody across the district, these are the types of things that were happening throughout this event. And so again, I could not be prouder, and I know you're proud of your staff and coming together for the community. So with that, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jody, for all you did. I know that you weren't home very much, and we thank all of our administrators and all of our teachers and staff that worked so diligently. You know, it does a great deal for team building, and it does a better job for team building than you could have with any other form of professional development. To work together under stress in a situation like that is an amazing way to develop new friends, to develop new people that you care about, but develop lifelong memories. So it's a wonderful thing. First up, Mrs. Ziegler.
Thank you. Well, and I know everyone's left, but I hope that they listen to this because I appreciate this. I feel like I'm so glad we had the opportunity to recognize the amazing efforts and the stories that you just couldn't imagine. And I know even just hearing them and then hearing them after the fact, even at the shelters and seeing it in real time really is something. But even what has Roy explained that, hearing that, just my mouth would be down to the floor because it just was unimaginable, but it was incredible, heroic example. And it's really just a testament that your title doesn't determine a leader. It's all about your action. And then just showcases what we did today and what you showcased today. And I just, at my bottom of my heart, thank you. I think it's underscores the amazing human spirit that we have in this community, but even right here inside this district. So thank you for all the sacrifices that were made, because as was said at our special meeting before, many of our members of staff had incredible damage to their own homes themselves, yet they were still here and doing everything they needed to do or couldn't even get home. And their commitment really was to our community, to make sure everyone was safe. And it makes me incredibly proud. And my hat's off to, I know, our principals. You think about a lot of the things that people are being asked to do is not necessarily something they thought they would be doing when they signed up to work in a school district, but lo and behold, that is it. So everything from transportation to food and nutrition services, and then our principals and then our central administrators. Thank you. I hope we can have a more specific celebration to showcase our gratitude to the hard work that everyone did. So again, thank you very much.
Mrs. Brown.
I too want to thank our staff and our superintendent and our COO for all the work that they put in. They worked around the clock. And even after the storm, working so hard to make sure that all of our schools were up and ready. All of our contractors came in and worked with them, and then the community turned out to support our families that were displaced and our staff families that were displaced, and we're still going through that. And we had our staff working around the clock too, trying to help them find home and whatnot. And so I think what you've done for our schools to get our schools back up, I really appreciate that. But I really also appreciate the hand that you put out for our staff that lost their own homes or have been put out. And not only what we've been doing, but also the whole community. Because again, you talk about, working as one for the success of all. This has really shown how we really do work as one. And I appreciate your leadership in this, Dr. Asplin.
Mr. Edwards.
I echo what everyone said, and I honestly want to say that I thought Jody captured how I'm every day proud to be part of the school district and to really experience and see firsthand all of the amazing kindness and effort that went into this. And Gary, actually, I didn't realize that he had already spent 3 or 4 days of what he had gone through. But we found out that Venice High School was rapidly becoming a shelter, and Gary was there that night, and he was one of the people that I got to meet as a friend. That man was working, moving dog crates and getting people where they needed to be, and always had a smile on his face, always, always. And that exemplifies the spirit that Sarasota County Schools has for their community, for their students, and for their families. And I can't express my gratitude in words other than to just say thank you. It was amazing.
Mrs. Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to reiterate and thank you all for sharing the heroism that took place. Mr. Sprinkle, well done. I think that it's important to also mention how our community, Sarasota, is a phenomenal place to live. And when there's a disaster, everyone coming together. And I know that Dr. Moore had a lot of resources coming in from a multitude of directions and distributed those far and wide. So thank you to our foundation and all the community members that brought in enormous resources and continue to do so, as well as the state and federal government. And all of that is still going on, but thank you all.
Okay, and that brings us to the end of our special presentation and our superintendent's report. Dr. Asplin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. I, too, just want to briefly just say thank you and to our folks, all of our folks, and how proud I am. I think Jody really captured everything pretty much. But I will tell you that watching everybody work together with the amount of hours that they were awake and working to help all the guests in our shelters, so proud of that. You can't even explain it unless you were there to see it. And I'm so proud of every single person that worked on those shelters. And I do want to say also a special thank you to our group that really were trying to support all the schools as information was coming in very quickly. That's Steve Cantis, Brandon Johnson, Craig Maniglia, Jody Dumas, and Chris Renoff. We were able to spend 4 days together in a room, and that was interesting. But it was really great, and I got to see Brandon and how he can have a walkie-talkie in one ear, a phone in the other ear, be working on his computer, and have a conversation with you all at the same time. So that was pretty impressive. But I do want to say, Jody, our COO, amazing job with all the different departments, food service, transportation, custodial, the maintenance people, getting the contractors together. You did an outstanding job, and I just want to say thank you, Jody, for all of that. And I don't know how Steve did it, but he seemed like he was on different campuses at different shelters all at the same time. His voice was coming across that radio all the time, but thank you for that. And you all have done just an amazing job. And then I also want to say thank you to our contractors. They're the reason that we were able to open up so quickly. Jody made calls to them. I know we have good relationships with them as well, but I've never seen contractors work so fast in all my life. And I know that everybody's seen the show Flip Your House. Well, this was Flip Your Schools. And they flipped these schools quicker than any house. And the amount of work that they've done, that they did in such a short amount of time, working 24/7 around the clock to get our kids back, just absolutely amazing. And then also, again, our principals running the shelters, and then cleaning everything up, getting it ready for the teachers to come back and the students come back, and then getting everyone back, and the teachers who were back last week in North County, and then this week, yesterday in South County, and then today, the final 2 open. So we have all of our schools open at this time. The teachers are absolutely amazing. Everybody at those schools, they lost. There are a lot of when you go to those schools and you talk and you find out, they won't tell you, but I find out there are a lot of people that lost everything, and they're at work. And they're at work helping the students because they care so much about the students and they know they need to be back. And our administrative staff as well lost quite a bit. Some people lost their entire home as well. And then that brings me to the employee assistance team, Dr. Moore and Deb, and who else was involved in that? Allison, working with, Davion, and working with all the donations that came in from the community. Unbelievable. The community is amazing. They are absolutely amazing working together and bringing all the different items to the schools and the churches and everything. That has helped so much with our families and our students and also our employees. They are so grateful because, like I said, a lot of them lost everything, even the clothes on their back today going to work. That's what they had when they were in the hurricane. And so helping them with all those different items has really helped so much. And I'm just so proud of this community coming together. It's just fantastic. And, we're just going to continue to move forward. But I just wanted to mention all of that and just make sure everybody understood how proud I am of this community coming together to help each other out. It's fantastic. So with that, I have a couple other items and then a quick video, and then we'll move on. Let's see. October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Americans observe National Disability Employment Awareness Month to pay tribute to the accomplishments of the men and women with disabilities whose work helps keep the nation's economy strong by reaffirming their commitment to ensure equal opportunities for all citizens. And this year's theme is Inclusion Drives Innovation. I also want to say that October is National Principals Month, but I do want to tell our principals we're going to recognize you on November 1st at our board meeting because there's so much going on in this board meeting. But we are so happy that our principal, of what they do every single day, but we want to thank them for their hard work in helping our students be successful and their employees and families as well. Thank you to our principals. This week is also National School Bus Safety Week. And then Riverview High School with the swatting call. I do want to make sure everybody understands, when you get that call that there's an active shooter at a school, that knot goes right to your stomach. And I know I was at Northport area at the time when I received that call, and it's just not the call that you want to get. But Erin Hoy, our principal there, she called me and let me know what was going on. And this was just a few minutes after everything began. She put together the command center right there in her office and worked with our police officers and the other agencies and the sheriff's office as well. And I want to thank her and her staff, and the teachers and the students for reacting like they did. It was like a dry run, and I was pleased to see the amount of law enforcement who showed up, and the ambulances and the fire department, everybody that showed up. It was awesome to see the response to that after all the training that does occur on a continual basis. I want to thank our Sarasota County Schools Police. We had, I think there were 3 at the school, and they instantly ran to the classrooms that we thought were affected. Instantly, they were there within less than a minute. It was less than a minute they were there, and then the sheriff's office showed up within less than 2 minutes. I just want to say thank you to all of those folks for helping out quite a bit. And then our communications department did a great job. They had 4 communications out during that hour of what's going on, play-by-play, sending those communications out to parents through social media so everybody would know. So thank you all so much for that. We're going to debrief, obviously, and the county's going to debrief. We will, and the sheriff's office on the hurricane and the swatting call. And then we will take something that we think went really, really well in both situations and try to make it even better, because we want everyone to be safe here in our school district. And then finally, Family Access Portal, just want to encourage everyone, if you haven't already, please make sure that you create a portal account in our system. That is how we communicate with you when we send out the Connect Ed. So please make sure you check that as a family and the fact that you should have a portal account there. And then now I just want to show a quick video and then we'll move on.
These past few weeks have been full of wild and unexpected turns. Hurricane Ian's powerful winds snapped trees, roads were left underwater, some completely washed away, and communities were left in the dark due to expansive power outages. 14 Sarasota County schools, built for teaching and learning, were transformed into safe havens staffed by our administrators for our neighbors seeking to escape the storm that was to come. Our bus drivers heroically transported those who are medically dependent to safety, even as waters were rapidly rising. As we continued picking up the pieces, we are inspired by how our community has rallied together. Whether it was picking up a hammer, handing over a grocery bag full of food, or putting on a pair of gloves to haul debris, our Sarasota County schools are being built back stronger because of you. Through the generosity of our foundation partners, the dedication of our contractors and staff, and the partnership of our EOC, we are ready to go, head first, right back into another great year full of learning, relationship building, academic opportunities, and more. Countless people have worked day and night to ensure our students, families, and employees are safe and are set up to thrive and succeed. We truly believe in working as one for the success of all, and we have seen this exemplified more than ever during this time of need. We may still have some work left to do, but we know this is only a temporary setback, and behind every setback lies an opportunity. So from all of us within Sarasota County Schools, thank you. We know this is going to be another incredible year.
Really great. And now we have our hearing of citizens. At this point in the meeting, we're going to hear from citizens wishing to speak who have completely filled out and submitted a citizen's card. And that card will be based on an agenda item that we have on our board agenda this evening. Any speakers addressing the school board shall not make remarks which are irrelevant to the business of the school board or which are abusive, threatening, defamatory, obscene, profane, or otherwise of a disorderly nature. As such, it is not a forum for attacking individual employees or school board members. Any such complaints should be submitted in writing to the superintendent or the school board member. Please speak to the board, not the audience. This is a business meeting of the school board, and the public expects that we'll conduct it in an orderly, efficient, effective, and dignified manner. We humbly ask that you act as you were taught as a child, be respectful of others, and treat them as you would want to be treated. Finally, a public servant elected by the people of this county, we will listen with open minds and open hearts to your comments. We respect your First Amendment rights to freedom of speech, and as a citizen of this great country, you must understand that your rights are not absolute. You are not free to speak your mind, and you cannot defame an individual or yell fire in a crowded theater. With rights comes responsibilities. And so we begin. Mr. Edwards, would you call the first speaker forward?
Barbara Vaughn, Michelle Posey on deck.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Vaughn. I want to speak to you about 3 agenda items under the heading Field Trips. Northport High School thespian students are scheduled to go to New York City, New York, as are the Pineview School high school choirs, also scheduled in March of next year to go to New York City. I don't have to tell you if you've been watching the news, New York is not a good place to be these days. If I was the parent of one of these young people scheduled to make one of these trips, I would do what I hope most of these parents will do. Let them go, bless them, and pray mightily while they're gone. The third item on the school board agenda today is the Riverview High School Kilty Band making a field trip to Boston, Massachusetts, to perform in the South Boston St. Patrick's Day Parade. Having grown up in Savannah and been the participant in a number of St. Patrick's Day parades, I know that's going to be a joyous occasion for them. But again, please, Lord Jesus, protect these young people. As parents, we are always nervous when they are out of our sight, and especially so far away. We ask you to protect them in dangerous places and keep them safe, just as you have kept so many of our friends and family members safe through Hurricane Ian. Lord Jesus, be with the parents and hear their prayers for their students who are
Thank you.
traveling. Amen.
Robin Williams on deck.
Good evening, Michelle Posey from District 3. I wanted to speak today about agenda item number 38. It's regarding policy 6.29, the report of misconduct. I had some questions, and I'm hoping when you guys address this agenda item later in the meeting, maybe you could iron some of these out for me. This is pertaining to misconduct by an employee that is in regard to maybe romantic, sexual, and lewd acts. And how that's going to be handled. Section 2 speaks about an investigation portion. Section 2C outlines that the superintendent would immediately investigate an allegation and goes on to say failure to report such conduct to the Department of Education or law enforcement forfeits the superintendent's salary for a year. My issue is with the verbiage "or." This implies that there's an option not to report the allegation to law enforcement, and there is no clarity on whether or not that law enforcement body might be the school police or the sheriff's department. I'm just wondering, when there's an allegation, if this policy could outline exactly what the steps are to making sure that that's investigated properly. The other thing that I had a little issue with is that it says that in Section 2D that you would notify parents within 30 days of the reported incident. As a parent, that would not be okay with me. I don't think that there's a part of our district that would think that we shouldn't notify the parents immediately if there was an allegation made. Again, I feel this policy is just poorly constructed and maybe needs some revamping, or maybe you could just go into detail and educate me further if I've misunderstood anything. Thank you.
Teresa DeWitt on deck.
Hi, my name is Robin Williams. I'm here representing the Democratic Public Education Caucus of Minnesota. Our caucus has voted to oppose the construction of a cell phone tower on the Booker campus. In fact, the Sarasota School District should not have cell phone towers on our school properties. They should be dismantled. We should not be putting our students and staff at potential health risks from cell towers, while cell service companies operate on the cheap while throwing out various enticements to the school district. The scientific data on the effects of close exposure to a 5G tower is not available. Consequences of long-term exposures to earlier 3G and 4G service are not fully understood nor conclusive either. There's a lack of funding for independent studies of environmental and other exposures to human health. And because if you study it, you might just find that there are correlations of concern. Historically, corporate interests like those of the tobacco, asbestos, and mining industries did their best to hide and deny risks to human health and also spent money to spread false information while their businesses cause harm to the public, their employees, and their families. We should be wary where rigorous information is lacking. It'd be much safer for Milestone to spend the money for vacant land or place their tower on a commercial enterprise away from homes and public properties. It must be cheaper for them to put it on public property. Our business should be educating, protecting our children, even if it means spending more for cell phone service and losing their incentives. I understand that one of the selling points to Booker was that an existing cell tower providing service to the Newtown community was being dismantled. That's no excuse for siting a tower that's constantly emitting microwave radiation on a school campus. How many?
Thank you. Lisa Shore, Mark Glover on deck.
My name is Lisa Scher, and I'm here to voice my opposition to the approval of Agenda Item 40, a lease agreement with Milestone Tower Management to allow for the construction of a new cell phone tower at Booker High. Earlier today, I submitted information to the school board regarding the health risks of cell towers, and I hope that each of you had an opportunity to review that documentation. Cell towers emit radio frequency radiation, which results in increased cancer risk, cellular stress, headaches, sleep issues, genetic damage, changes to the reproductive system, memory deficits, and impacts the central nervous system. Children are the most vulnerable to cell phone radiation as they absorb it deeper into their brains and bodies, and their developing brain and organ systems are more sensitive to environmental stressors. Scientists around the world believe that the weight of peer-reviewed evidence supports the conclusion that radiofrequency radiation should be regarded as a human carcinogen. These scientists have also evaluated the cell tower radiation exposure limits of the U.S. Federal Communications Commission and found the limits are decades outdated and not protective of public health. It's also interesting to note that cellular companies are required to warn their shareholders of potential financial risk from litigation related to radiofrequency radiation exposure in their annual reports submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission, yet they do not warn the people exposed to emissions from their cell towers. We must ask ourselves, would you want a cell tower to be built next to your house? Likely and hopefully your answer is no. Then why should we allow this tower to be placed on school property right next to vulnerable students when the science clearly shows that such proximity is dangerous to our children? I strongly urge the school board to do the right thing and vote against Agenda Item 40. The health of our children must be paramount and isn't worth a de minimis revenue screen. And I also would like to point out, to the extent that we currently have cell towers on any of our school properties, we should seriously consider terminating those leases.
Thank you. Mark Glover. Carol Lerner, please.
Good evening, Carol Lerner for Support Our Schools. I'm speaking first on Agenda Item 3, Hurricane Effort. I would like to first extend my appreciation for all the hard work by our district, its leaders and staff, joined by the community during and after Hurricane Ian. You are all our heroes, and the report tonight really touched me. It was beautiful. I mean, it was sad, but I just so appreciate. That said, I think it is important that Sarasota County schools become leaders in preparing for both the effects of climate change and for fighting for good climate policies in our schools. In terms of preparation, we need to harden all our buildings to withstand the increasing chance of climate change-related incidents, just as we hardened our buildings to prevent gun tragedies. Let's face it, Ian is not an anomaly, but a normality. I am not an expert here, nor do I have time to go into details on what needs to be done for this weather hardening. But one thing I know is that every building should have backup power through system-wide generators. And to help reverse the present doomsday trajectory of climate change, we should install solar panels on every district roof. With our flat roof buildings in the Sunshine State, on the Suncoast, we should be able to supply all our energy needs. In addition, we need to incorporate climate change, its current effects and future ramifications into our curriculum. We need to develop informed citizens and skilled scientists and technicians to win the climate war. That brings me to agenda number 40, lease agreement with Milestone Tower. My personal slogan is yes to solar and no to cell towers on school grounds. Like others speaking on this issue tonight, I am opposing to placing a 5G cell tower on the grounds of Booker High School because we do not know the short-term and long-term effects of the radiation on humans, particularly children. The proper studies have not been done. Many limited studies have shown risk of cancer. I urge you to vote no or to table this
Thank
issue.
you. Madam Chair, that concludes hearing of citizens.
Thank you. Next up, we have the consent agenda, and we have, do we have revisions to the consent agenda?
I was signed up to speak, and my name wasn't called.
Are you Mark Glover?
No, Ron Springman.
Yes, you're in the general comment section, which is at the end of the meeting.
Yes, Madam Chair. An addendum was added to item number 8, instructional classified personnel report. Also, item number 26, policy 3.14, suicide prevention, has been moved to a future agenda. And then I was asked that we move 2 other items to new business, item number 31 and item number 32.
And those were handed to you in a note in the meeting, correct?
Madam Chair, if I may. Yeah, I wanted to move 31 and 32. They were actually not approved unanimously, and out of respect for the craziness with the superintendent, with the hurricane, I just wanted to revise that now. So if I could move 31, 32 to new business, that's 4.21 and 4.22.
31. I'm sorry, what were the policy numbers you?
Policy numbers were what?
Sorry, it was 4.21, item number agenda 31, policy number 4.21, and item number 30, agenda item 32, policy 4.22. Both of those were on our September 6th meeting for the advertisement, and they were not unanimously approved. That's all. They're being approved for advertisement. So nothing has changed since that meeting. It's just the difference of advertisement versus approval. Thank you. Not a big deal.
So we have to amend this, or can we just?
I think our protocol on this is that the board, by vote, amends the agenda.
So we have
There's
to.
a request to take them separately.
Take them separately, so.
Let's say that's in the form of a motion.
Yes. So Bridget would you make the motion, please?
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Don't we have to approve her?
That's what we're going about doing at this point in time, is we're going about doing that.
We don't have to approve her amending it.
We have to approve what she did to amend it,
Okay.
which is 4.21 and 2.2. But we had asked about this, I think, several times over the last couple of weeks, and even asked again last week. I don't know why. We always get these done at the very last minute, but we need to vote now on amending the agenda, moving 4.21 and 4.22 to new business. And I'll call for a vote, starting with Mrs. Brown. How do you vote?
All right, it needs to be seconded, doesn't it?
Second.
Okay, I vote yes.
Yes.
I vote no. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Yes.
And motion carries 4-1 with 1 dissent. So now we move on to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Less the items that you asked. Your motion, as I understood what happened, Madam Chair.
I'm just trying to be respectful to the
motion
chair.
carried.
Yes, it did carry.
For the entire, but that was I'm sorry, I want to make sure it was for the consent agenda as amended. So I want to make sure that you understood it wasn't just to
No,
move
I
those two up.
thought I was just doing that and then moving back, but I'm fine with that. So we're done. We don't have to approve the consent agenda. Very good. Okay, this is why it gets confusing, and but it doesn't matter, does it? Because I won't be here for long. Okay, so we don't have any items pulled. Now we're moving into new business. And the first item under new business is item number 40. I'm going to leave it as it is here and add those two at the end, because I think that's a little easier. So the first item that we have, may I have a motion, please? Item number 40.
Well, see, she's got different numbers than I'm
Well,
showing
because
here.
the agenda on our screen is different than the agenda in our hands.
And that's
so-
because I'm sorry, that's because she's able to amend it or change it. But if item 43 is the approval of the lease, if you're looking at this piece of paper, item 43, if this is the first item on new business, if she has it, it's been maybe amended because it's pulled two have been pulled out, I'm not sure. But the first item of new business is approval of the real property lease agreement. Is that correct?
It is item 43, but I was reading from the book. I wasn't reading from the screen. Okay, so item number 43, may I have a motion? Did we have a motion? I don't even remember. I don't even know where we are. What day is the week is this? This is just
Well,
so
because we're
confused.
operating off of two different agendas, and it's very difficult because the agenda on the screen for the public's knowledge is ordered differently than the agenda on the paper.
Yes, I
Which
got
makes
that.
our conversation a little challenging.
So may I have a motion, please, for item number 43?
Can you read it, please, so we're operating from the same item?
That the School Board of Sarasota County approve the real property lease agreement for Booker High School, 3201 North Orange Avenue, Sarasota, Florida, as presented.
So moved.
May I have a second? I'll second it. Please vote.
Wait a minute.
Sorry, do we have some, we do have some discussion.
Yeah, we have some discussion on it, and I would hope answering some of the concerns that we had from the public. Is there somebody from
Mr. Dumas?
Milestone?
I'm sorry.
Yes, if you'd prefer, we have Diane Caminati. She's our Director of Planning, who's kind of led this process. We have a couple of quick slides just to take you through kind of the summary of the process. And we do have a representative tonight from Milestone to answer any technical questions that you may have.
Thank you.
So if I could get the PowerPoint presentation put up, that'd be great. And Diane, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Jody. All right, so back in March of this year, March 1st, at the board meeting, the board had approved for Milestone Tower Company to assume responsibility of our existing cell tower leases. Those are cell towers currently at Venice High, Sarasota High, STC main campus, the transportation department next to Pineview, and then at Goshio. Within that agreement, it also gives Milestone the opportunity to market for new leases. And Milestone, along with their partnership with Verizon, had seen the need at Booker High. So they had presented May 3rd to the board for a proposed cell tower at Booker High School, and then held their first community meeting on June 2nd, and then a second community meeting on August 15th. So this is the proposed site location. It's on the north end of the campus. Sorry. Just south of Myrtle Street. The existing cell tower that's coming down is basically right across the street. We have some next steps. These times and these dates have kind of shifted a little bit with this being moved to a different board meeting, but we're looking for possible completion in about May of 2023 for the tower. And then the proposed revenue, Milestone shares 40% of the lease revenue, and they fund a one-time payment of $45,000 to the school district. So if you have any questions, we can answer. We have Len Forkas from Milestone here.
I've read some of the discussions that you have had with the community, and there have been, what, 2 community events?
Yes. The first community event, the tower was originally proposed adjacent to the football field, and then that was deemed not a great location. There was not good access. So we moved the tower to the north side of the campus, and then had a second community meeting based on not just the relocation, but gave more of an opportunity for the community to speak.
And as I understand, about 67% of people use only cell phones these days. They don't use any other form of phone communication. And how has the community, or what does the community say about this location?
So there were different responses. I mean, I think the majority of the community, including Dr. Shelley, were responsive to the cell tower, especially since the existing tower is coming down, and that would leave a lack of service, not just for the community itself, but for the school and the students there. So there was concern for that. Of course, there was community concern about health and safety as well.
I spoke to both Dr. Shelley. Is she here tonight?
Dr. Shelley is here.
Hello. I spoke to her this morning, and I also spoke to Mary Butler from the Amaryllis Homeowners Association. And she was not representing the association as such, but she said she really felt that it was a good idea. And I know that they are hoping not only to carry Verizon, which is across the street, but also to carry T-Mobile and Infinity and AT&T, which would really be good for the Newtown community because there is a lack of coverage in that area. So, Dr. Shelley, do you have something to add, please?
Yes, may I please?
Yes.
I just wanted to share some additional facts I think is really important, and that is during our first meeting, I was adamant that we must communicate with the entire Booker population, including our families on campus, our students, and our neighborhood community members. So what we did was, because I have a huge bilingual population, I worked very closely with the district to make sure that we sent a notification out in both Spanish and in English. It went to all of our students and our families. Also, there was approximately a mailing list with 368 parcel owners that were in a 1-mile radius that also received information about our first town hall meeting, and that was online and in person. I was not at that meeting. My assistant principal, along with district staff, was at the meeting, and there was probably about 60 questions that was formulated in that meeting that Milestone, along with myself and the district, we were able to answer in preparation for the second town hall meeting. And the second town hall meeting, the same thing occurred with communication and also with proper notification. I have been in contact with Ms. Lerner and others about the project, and I just want to share some personal thoughts and also some facts. As it stands right now in the Newtown community, that particular cell phone tower that is there, that's across the street from our school, it's been there for years. Most of our community members did not know that it was there, but it's been there for a long time. It's not being properly maintained, and in March, it's going down. So we are very concerned about the cell phone coverage and accessibility that's going to be available not for the building students at Booker High School staff and students, but also in the Newtown community. That's a very concern. The way that it was first introduced, it was going to be on our football field. And that may have been considered because currently there is a cell phone tower that's attached to one of our local high schools on their field. We determined that our particular land space was not appropriate for that. So after meeting and conversating with my staff and district staff, we found another appropriate location, and it's right off of Myrtle Avenue. So I want to share this with you because this is really important to connect the dots. During Hurricane Ian, what they didn't tell you is that we were having two meetings twice a day, to talk about Hurricane Ian. I could not email my staff because the majority of them did not have access to email. So what did I do? The old-fashioned cell phone tree. So I would actually cell phone and send a message out to their phones on my particular personal cell phone to communicate with our families and also with my teachers. And that's how I was getting a lot of information out. Every time there was something that happened, I would send a message out twice a day. Now, fast forward. I did a survey just before I came here today, and I surveyed my staff. And I said to them, about 60% responded in such a short period of time. And I asked questions about cell phone use on campus. It is horrible. And why is it important? When we have an emergency crisis, I pick up my phone and I go into an outlet, a program, and that's where I communicate. When cell phone service is down, when I need to communicate an emergency, I'm sorry, guys, but sometimes we do it with our cell phones. So I do worry about access and accessibility. So it does interfere with the entire cooperation and running of our schools successfully, safety and security. And then there's another area of concern. My students also use their cell phones for academic arenas in the classroom. I know everybody has their own personal thoughts and opinions, but sometimes that is what we have to do. But when it's available, because calls are always dropping, when it's available. So I do worry about what's going to happen if this is not something that we're considering. I want to level the playing field for Booker High School students like we have for Pineview. There's a cell phone tower near Riverview. There's one at Sarasota, and I don't want to widen the digital divide for the Newtown community as well as for the students of Booker High School. So that's what I want to share from a personal experience. I work a lot in the community. I do not live there, but I own property there, and I'm there all the time, and I worry about my family and friends in that community. The majority of the families in that area, they don't have house phones. And when their internet goes out, cell phone is the only way they can communicate. The way that it was explained to me is that with the cell phone tower, there's going to be 4 possible carriers. Right now, there's already a contract with Verizon with the possibility of adding 3 more. So when I'm speaking to Jet Grimes, who's a community activist in the Newtown community who lives and works there, he clearly is in support of this initiative along with some others. Now, there's some that are totally concerned, but if you were at the meeting, you had an opportunity to hear from the doctor who presented and talked about some of the areas of concern. So I just wanted to share that from a principal's perspective. So it gets my vote, and it gets the vote of the majority, 60% of my staff, and I do have it in writing. But if there's any other health concerns, I do hope that we're able to address that with the Milestone representative or any doctors who has researched and talked about a particular topic and area of concern. I have a grandson that is not here, but I would feel totally comfortable with him being in the area, knowing that he has access to cell phone coverage and accessibility. So with that, I just kind of jumped in and started talking like
That's why we were happy that you were coming tonight.
So Dr. Shelley is always intricately involved in anything on our campus and in the community, so we appreciate obviously that input, and you've got the timeline in terms of what was done on campus, and so if there are any technical questions, like I said, is a representative from Milestone here, so I'll turn it back over to you, Board Chair, and what would you like to
Great,
say?
we have some more questions. Mrs. Rose,
I don't have questions. I have a statement when we're done.
you want to go ahead?
No, I'll wait till people are done.
You were
with their
next up.
questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Ziegler.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shelley. You just underscored all the statements I made in the report of the other day. And I'm really glad you said that because I'm on the fence. I know I brought this up at the initial first step, and I'm not sure. I went back in the May meeting. For a lot of the reasons, health unknowns, concerns, but then also I do agree on the other aspect of I don't want to put Booker High School students or the Newtown community at any kind of lower unfair playing field. You raised a very good point there. And the component that many of our other high schools have this in a close proximity. I'm in agreement that I would prefer cell phone towers just not be an option on our campuses and find an alternative place to do so. I understand that's probably a future conversation, and we'd be talking about removing many that are already in current existence. The number one thing that I recall that I brought up in May, and I still don't have an answer to, but it was because these are providing revenue, I want to see that, and we have different agreements at different high schools or different schools as it pertains to these, but I wanted to see that particular particular revenue went to that school community. Can we get a response on that? Because that was my number one condition of approving this. So if you recall,
I'm sure Dr. Shelley has an opinion.
I saw her face already.
And so I know Dr. Aspel and I have had conversations about that currently, and this is the way we've operated for years. All the revenue from cell towers comes back to the finance department. It is an unrestricted fund that can be used across the district for any type of expense, and then that gets reallocated across the district to schools who need certain things or whatever that might be. Certainly, that's a conversation the board can have. If you'd like to redistribute that differently, have some stay at Booker High, that's a conversation we could have. Past practice has been it comes to the district and then gets distributed out in terms of need at the schools. So that would be the next conversation for you to have.
So I guess that makes sense for our future workshop, because I understand the unrestricted funds did have flexibility, if I recall, actually, it was the last hurricane where that was brought forward. So I'm not going to make that decision in a silo or isolation, but that's kind of where my mindset is. If it's creating any kind of concern or hazard, I definitely agree that if there are questions from a medical standpoint, I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not going to bring those forward, but I do hear it from members of the communities across, as it comes to this topic, no matter whether it's Newtown or anywhere in our area. I don't take those lightly, and I do want to make sure those are properly addressed, not just for the sake of getting it pushed through, but so that we hear those concerns and we answer them with fidelity. And other than that, I think there's a lot of future conversations that really do warrant themselves. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
Well, I'm really worried about these phones that we have in this room. And I think we all have a problem as well by, the phones that we have around us today. But I know that the 5G is the big thing of the future, and I don't know where but I have heard that 5G is better and less radiation and so forth than 4G. Am I wrong?
My name is Len Forkas. I'm the founder of Milestone.
Yes. Welcome.
There's really, the reality is that the FCC has standards
Yes.
for what's considered safe and harmful, and the 5G technology completely complies with all the standards that they've established. They continuously look at these standards and ensure that they are up to date, and so there's no really material difference between 4G and 5G in terms of health standards.
But we are really getting tight on approving this and having this installed in a timely manner, because it will take us, 10 weeks, 12 weeks or whatever to get this installed. And then we're looking at sometime in early spring, March, for the other tower. So we want ours to be up, I would think, perhaps before that.
Yeah, that would be our goal. I mean, we've already started the engineering process, even
Correct.
absent this approval. But yeah, I mean, we're going to work as fast as we can. But the one thing I think you may have thought of is that it is lower power.
Okay.
So it requires less energy
Okay,
and fewer
that's
watts.
probably what I'm thinking.
So with respect to the amount of energy it's consumed, 5G is significantly lower than the prior technologies.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes. Last week when I was reviewing the board agenda, I had the good fortune of running into Dr. Shelley at an event, and so I was able to ask her last week her position on the cell phone tower. And if anyone knows Dr. Shelley, she loves her community, she cares for her students, and she only wants the best for them, and I would assume that includes their health. So I take that into great consideration when I'm deciding this. I also spent a fair amount of time in the last 2 days really scouring the internet, both with the data that was provided by some of our speakers spoke tonight. They sent data. I researched that group. And there's still... It's inconclusive is basically what it comes down to. And I certainly don't want to find myself putting students in jeopardy health-wise by any stretch of the imagination. But I think, to Mrs. Ziegler's point, that I'm going to support this in the sense that Dr. Shelley has pointed out its immediate needs, but then, as Mrs. Ziegler pointed out, I think it requires a larger conversation about all of the cell towers at all of the schools, which shouldn't be convoluted into what we're trying to discuss here tonight. So I will be supporting this.
Mrs. Brown.
Is somebody going to address the issues of the dangers of a cell phone tower or the radiation? I heard there was a doctor that spoke at the community meeting. Could somebody tell us what that was?
That was a health expert that is a radio frequency energy expert, and was able to answer questions that were presented from people in the community regarding the amount of radio energy that's emitted from the antennas. And again, we are required by law to monitor the amount of radio energy that is transmitted from our sites to ensure that they are within the standards of the FCC. Now, there's some people that don't agree that the standards for the FCC are appropriate, but that's the standard that we are required by law to comply with. I can tell you that we've been building cell towers for over 22 years. We build predominantly on municipal sites, half of which have been on schools, built hundreds of sites. We monitor the school sites, and on average, our radio energy is less than 5% of the FCC standard. The FCC standard says this is what causes harm. Then they have a 50 times safety factor for that number. So this causes harm. The standard is 50 times that number. And we are on average, less than 5% of that standard. And again, it's something we take very seriously. It's something that we study every year. We do studies on all of our school, many of our schools, to determine that we're within those standards.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I remember when the electric towers were being built over Philippi Shores, and I wasn't a board member then, but there was a lot of talk that teachers were getting cancer and they're getting headaches and all of this, and it was very serious talk for a few years, and then it went down. My daughter's been teaching over there now for 12 years, and I don't think we're hearing any negative effects for those towers. I think people see those things, and there's always stories, and they come and they go. But when I hear that you're 5% of what the FCC allows, I think that's pretty safe. And I'm glad that they're not the big ugly metal towers that like the one at STC next to that rehab facility. They look much nicer. They blend in with the community. And I think more importantly, which Dr. Shelley said, the community needs this. I mean, to say that, oh no, we shouldn't be doing this in this community because they were always sticking them in those community, and that's disrespectful to this community. No, it's respectful to this community to give them access to the cell phone. I use my cell phone like a computer today. I mean, I do my emails, I do my internet searches. I don't watch television on it, but I know people who do. I mean, and that's their connection to the world. And I think that we need to ensure that we have this, because if that other tower goes down in March, which is going to, I mean, that'll leave a big void in that community. And so on the minuscule, I believe, risk that it may provide, I think that the benefits definitely outweigh it. And I know that Milestone has been looking at this for a long time. And, is you a cancer survivor, or was it your wife?
My son.
Your son. I know you're very concerned about this issue and about health and how it might affect them. And so I'm confident that you've got the safeguards in there and that you will follow it closely. And I hope that we do get more than the one carrier out there, so that we can provide better service for this community. And I will be supporting it, and I have been all along. Thank you.
Mrs. Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think of a community like Sarasota, and it isn't acceptable that there's a digital divide in any of our municipalities. And that, for me alone, needs to be looked at, inter-county lands that are available. I'm not, a proponent of putting this on a campus. I was here as a employee, a teacher, when the Philippi issue with the electricity came up, and part of that community dialogue was building the new school significantly further away from how close it was to the power source. So there was, some resolution there with the community. The research has its pros and its cons. I'm not going to be supporting it because I think that as a community that we can have dialogue. There's land everywhere. The answer obviously isn't that there's a digital divide. That is not an option whatsoever. But at the same time, when there's concern in our community, I'm going to listen to it, and I would be a strong proponent of putting this on hold, and not that we would land with a digital divide, but we would find land that wasn't on a school through our community partnership. So I will not be supporting it. And as far as revenue goes for Booker, I haven't been able to see the individual school budgets. I'd like to see them because I think that our schools in need that have more socioeconomic need or the like, I would like to see that you are getting additional revenue, and that doesn't have to be through anything that merits concern, as well as I want to reemphasize that a digital divide is not acceptable. So I will not be supporting this.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Just listening to my fellow colleagues and sharing, I mean, at least three of us, I think, said very similar things. And I don't want to postpone things to hurt the ability and accessibility for the Booker High School students and certainly Newtown. But I also think that, at least if I'm hearing people, and I do not want to speak for my fellow board members, so please forgive me, but I'm just trying to find a solution where I think it may make more sense that we pull this and suspend to bring us back, because of the urgency, back to a very near future board workshop, so that we can assess not only the financial revenue part, but also look at the options, because I don't want to just only focus on the concerns that I also share that will hurt Booker High School and Newtown area. I don't find that fair when we have these existing, the same concerns should exist for the other schools. So finding those alternative situations, I feel like it's like a double negative here, where it's like, well, we don't really support it, don't love it, don't feel really comfortable, but we don't want to hurt these students, and like that doesn't feel right. And these are valid concerns, but I think it warrants an urgency to say, hey, we know this is coming down. We need to make sure we have an option. I don't know. I'm not a tech person. I'm thinking can we get like an Elon Musk thing? I don't know. I think that was internet, but still. But I'm just saying, like a Starlink. But no, I'm being serious. In all seriousness, I just feel like it may make sense that we pull this item and put forward to a future workshop, and an immediate future workshop, so that we can assess this. So with that, I'm going to move that we pull the item and move it to a future agenda item, but then to put it on the next workshop's agenda.
Second that motion.
Any discussion on that? Oh, Mrs. Brown.
I oppose pulling this. We've talked about this before. The community who is affected by this have had 2 meetings, and they're supportive of this, and 5% of the allowable by the FCC is what we're being exposed to. I mean, I think we make a mistake every time we get, and I'm telling you, the handful of people I'm hearing from today are ones I'm normally with them. We can't pull things and react when we have a handful of people come to talk to us about something, when we've heard about this before, it's been coming before, and it's been workshopped in the community. I think it would be wrong to pull it at this time. I think we need to, for the community, to go forward with this, because we cannot leave this community without the service. And you talk about it should be somewhere else. Well, when you're talking about a community, you know, where else are you going to put it? You're going to put it, you know, by this, you know, Section 8 housing? Are you going to put it in a park? I mean, you're going to put it at a business? It's going to be somewhere. And, you know, there's always going to be some place where someone's going to complain. And I think we've looked at this site, and the community has responded, and they've looked at it. And I don't think we need to move forward with any, I mean, we need to pull it at all. I mean, I think we just need to go ahead and move forward with it tonight.
Mrs. Ziegler.
Just wanted to respond to that. Thank you. No, I do want to, I appreciate everyone's concerns today here, but this is not a new concern that's been raised even by myself, and it's certainly not isolated to the individuals in this room or even who have emailed. This is a pretty well-known concern broadly across not only our community, but, you know, across multiple communities. So I don't want to just diminish that validity. That's all. But so my motion stands. I do respect the back and forth. It's not intended to create undue delay. I think it's a warranted delay just with the urgency. So that's where my motion is.
So we have a motion and a second. We have finished discussion. All those in favor of postponing it and moving it forward, please signify by saying aye individually, starting with Mrs. Brown.
No.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
I want to not pass it. I want to keep it.
So no.
I'm voting no.
Okay.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
And I vote no. So it fails by a margin of 3-2 with dissent from Mrs. Brown, myself, and Mr. Edwards. So that has failed. So now we return to the original motion, and it's item number 33. There is no, Shirley Brown for discussion.
Well, you know, we've got cell phone towers at several of our other schools, and we haven't heard of any problems that they have caused.
Yes.
You know, and the one at STC is very close to a rehab center. I mean, if you talk about having one that's close, but the cell phone tower was there before the rehab center was. Cell phone towers and cell phones are here to stay. And I think we found a place that needs one, and we found a partner that's going to help us supply that, and I think we need to go forward with this.
Mr. Edwards.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what I had said earlier, is that I fully support Dr. Shelley's decision for her school, her students, and the community. But that still doesn't preclude us from having the bigger conversation should we decide that cell phone or cell towers are not appropriate for any of our schools.
Thank you. That ends discussion. Please vote. And we can do this online. I think it still works. And surprisingly, the motion carries 3-2 with Mrs. Ziegler and Mrs. Rose in dissent. May I have a motion for item number 44, please?
I will make the motion, and I would hope that other board members look to see. If you can see under the number, it says recommendation, and what you say, I move that we approve that Carr, Riggs, and Ingram LLC provide operational auditing services in an amount not to exceed $94,000 be approved as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Karen Rose.
Yes, Madam Chair. The question is if with the board changing in close to a month. Is there flexibility that, are we, the only option that we will have are the audit items that are in this contract, or is there flexibility to move that around a bit? I don't have an issue with the company looking at, as we move forward, getting input from new members as well on audit items.
I will be, leaving the board as chair, and you will make a decision as to who the new chair will be. This issue is that the fact that there will be 2 audits as opposed to 3, and that price is reflective of 2 audits. You can choose, based on already the risk assessment that we've done or anything else, what those 2 audits are. They won't be started at this time of year anyway with the hurricane and some of the other issues that we have. The first things that they'll be doing is to really go back to those 3 that they did last year, making sure that they are compliant with all of the changes and the things that were required. And so those would be done in the near future, and I think it probably would be, probably the first of the year before you would look at anything in human resources, if in fact that were the case, which was one of the suggestions, and the other one being transportation. But you have full flexibility with that.
Appreciate that very much.
2 done.
Thank you for taking the time to explain it.
Okay, so please vote. And the motion carries 5-0 unanimously. Okay, and now we're up to a new item, number 45, which someone else must read because
Make this simple.
I think that you can do that.
May I help?
Yes,
So,
please.
members, since I know that theirs were different, so if you have the hard copy in front of you, they were numbered 31 and 32, and it was for, I'm sorry, I lied. Nope. It was not for that.
No.
This is messing me up. Good
No, big
Lord.
time.
It was
Item 31 was
29 and 30. It is for.
It was 31 and 30, well, 31 and 32 on the new, is that correct, Mrs. Tompkins? It looks like
It's 31 and 32 on the one on our.
Correct. Sorry, I'm sorry. So it's for policies 4.21 and 4.22. For the sake of expeditiousness, the only reasons I pulled them and the reasons I did not vote in support is that there are provisions in both policies that we did need to move ahead with to comply with Florida law. However, there are components of there that reference a committee of which we still as a board have not been able to address. That is why I'm voting them down. I'm trying to move this along for the sake of time, but nothing, to my knowledge, as I've referenced it, has changed since it was advertised, but those are the reasons I will not be supporting them and ask for them to be pulled. So it is for 4.21 and 4.22 if someone wants to make a motion.
Are you making both of those as one motion?
If someone wants to make a motion, I certainly believe they would be able to.
Okay. Someone make a motion, please.
I move that we accept the policies 4.21 and 4.22 as presented.
Second. You can have it. That was Karen. Any discussion? We've already heard from Mrs. Miller. Anything? I'm sorry, Mrs. Brown. I was moving. I hope you all get a new queuing system.
what I haven't understood is why these changes are done to comply with changes in the law.
Yes.
And what I would like to ask, not as so much even for me, but when we get changes that are relative to new laws, if we could, when we get this, get the law that was changed and say, oh, this is why we had to change this, because it said this in the new law. And so we're changing this to the new law, and this is why we're having to change this. And if we're not accepting this because it doesn't comply with the new law or in some way, why not? I don't have the copy of the law, but I would assume you do, Ms. Ziegler. And could you tell us how these changes do not comply with the new law, the changes in the law?
Madam Chair, may I? Thank you. No, so you misunderstood. I have nothing to do with the compliance with the law. It's about the committee component language, of which is something I've had a concern with for some time. And
I'm sorry, you're talking too fast.
my concern is not about it complying with the new enacted law. My concern and issue is with the language around committees, which we as a board have some ambiguity and understanding, and were to have a workshop to fine tune that. I do not feel comfortable as one board member, which is in my authority, to not approve something if it is not in the posture of which I am prepared to put my name behind. And that is the reason I am not supporting it. And I look forward to the conversation as a board when we go over how we coordinate and construct committees. Thank you very much.
Tom Edwards.
In compliance with the law, I just want to be on record that anytime we have to form a committee that takes administrators and staff away from their core jobs to form a committee for the acceptance or denial of media or curriculum, when we already have a policy that allows for a parent to remove media or curriculum, and I am adamantly opposed to a community member or a parent removing materials for another parent's child. So I will I'm assuming these policies will find their way back to discussion after our new board is installed. So I will reiterate my commitment to those policies again.
Dr. Asplin.
Yes. If the reservation is due to the committee situation, as Ms. Ziegler had mentioned, I do want to bring to your attention the workshop that was supposed to happen on October the 11th, which we did not have because of the hurricane. One of the items on there is to discuss how the board would like to create committees, so I can understand why this would be pulled, if that was the reasoning behind it being pulled.
Mrs. Brown.
But we're not creating a committee here. But the law says we have to have a committee. So, I mean,
I think what I'm trying to say.
Well, so I guess if we don't pass these changes, the old procedures will be in place.
Right.
But we will be out of compliance with the requirement for a committee. And there's that whole issue about the certified media specialist that we don't even have the training yet for. That's not going to happen till January. And Lord only knows what might happen with the election. I mean, maybe, there'll be a change in the governorship and that committee will go away. I don't know. But this is all going to happen after I'm gone. But I support making the changes, but if you don't want to, that's okay with me. We'll go through this all again.
Yeah, it's, and I'm just, not to say want the changes or not want the changes, but just to be objective about the committee. I know that as a board, the board talked about creating committees and how we would do that, and that was a discussion that occurred, and I don't know, it was a good 10-minute discussion just about committees, and we decided to put on a workshop. Unfortunately, we had to cancel that workshop because of the hurricane. So that item is on the next workshop, which is November 8th, I believe.
Yes.
So we can discuss committees then, come to a final decision there on how to choose committees, and then we put this back on the next board meeting after that for a decision. But I just
maybe
want to make
not.
sure we're sure about.
But maybe not.
Maybe not.
If we
But-
vote it down, it's going to pass.
But that
so-
was the reasoning, the whole committee issue, and we did have quite a bit of discussion about that. And it would revert back to the way it was and is, and obviously all of these started July 1, and we're still working through all of those. Just that's how it works.
But the motion is on the table to approve it, so we're going to do a voice vote again. So, Mrs. Rose, how do you vote? Oh, Shirley Brown wants to speak.
A clarification. So if we vote no, Then we've got to workshop this again. We have to advertise it again. But the language that's here that talks about the committee, we still have to have the committee. It's just the workshop that we need to talk about how we're going to do the committee. And if what we did, I mean, we can make a change to this, but I would rather at least make some of the changes to get it in compliance with the law, because we could then go through and make more changes to this. I just don't understand why we're not making the changes that the law requires us to make, because we can make a new committee. That happens later, but it just tells us that we have to make the committee, this policy.
If we vote yes, we're voting to approve these policies. If we vote no, we're voting to kick the can down the road and do it later, after perhaps that workshop. So that's what we have on the table right now. I feel like I've been, herding cats.
You're doing a great job.
So, Mrs. Rose, would you please start our voting off, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair. I am voting no.
Mr. Edwards?
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Mrs. Ziegler?
Thank you very much. I vote no.
And Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
And so the motion carries 3-2 with dissent from Mrs. Rose and Mrs. Ziegler.
Thank you.
No one abstained from voting. That's good. So
Could we either ask the attorney or the superintendent or someone to get us a copy of the laws that required these changes so that we can see what those changes were and where the problems are?
Not this minute, though.
Not this minute, no.
we're just-
When we have it on the workshop.
Yeah. So
Before we get to the workshop.
So now we have announcements. I have some announcements, and do any of you have some announcements?
Yeah, my grandson's getting
Please
his
speak up or forever hold your peace.
eagle. I probably missed the whole thing by now, though.
Well, you're not free yet, so hold on, Mrs. Brown. So I want to say that the next board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 1st at 6 p.m., and the next workshop is scheduled for Tuesday, November the 8th at 9 a.m. If there are no other things to say at this point, I think we've run out of things to say. We're adjourned. And next up, we have our general comments, and we have 7 people for that, and I can hardly wait. Mr. Edwards, would you call the first person?
Ron Springman, Lila Newcomb on deck.
I wanted to thank the outgoing board members for their courage last year regarding mandating masks to protect our children and their relatives from the deadly Delta variant. Your actions saved countless lives, making Sarasota #2 city for less deaths per capita, while Florida as a whole, in 4 short months left last year from July to November, gained 23,000 more deaths, overtaking New York, which had only 6,000 additional deaths, by having strict mask mandates, as did Florida. While Texas, with 11 million less people than California, gained 13,000 deaths to catch California in total COVID deaths. Florida to date has over 9,000 more deaths than New York. After it was said in May 2020, Florida would never be like New York. Ironically, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida, all banning mask mandates, have nearly 3/4 of the HCA hospitals founded by Rick Scott, who received millions in HCA stock. The ICU beds were all but empty when the Delta variant was announced by the CDC in May 2021. HCA more than doubled their profits, over $5 billion during COVID 2021. The incompetence and political greed of governors who resort to disinformation and name-calling is despicable. For instance, stating, quote, "Someone needs to grab that little elf and chuck him across the Potomac," referring to a decades career CDC director whose job is to protect Americans. Well, it has been said someone should grab that obese ogre governor and chuck him into a Florida swamp along with Rick, the Donald, and their enablers. Once again, I thank this board for caring of our children's health and education. I myself will be voting once Republican Governor Charlie
Thank you.
Crist to save our democracy in this state from further
Thank you,
harm.
sir. Lila Newcomb, Michelle Posey on deck.
Hi, I'm Leela Newcomb, and I am a grandma of 3 fantastic children in the schools, one of whom is Dr. Shelley's student. And I'm first of all want to thank Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Goodwin for their amazing service over the few years that I have only been paying attention to all this stuff since COVID, which I think maybe has made everybody crazy. A lot of, division and everything. And but anyway, thank you, Mrs. Brown, and thank you, Mrs. Goodwin, so much. I am in awe of the way the community has come together over the hurricane, and I'm really honored to have been here for all of that. And they're not here now, but I thank them all. I don't want to talk about anything that's like super divisive. I just want to maybe talk about keeping an open mind for people that are here now and ones that are coming in. Just open mind. And I'm thinking in terms of the gay stuff and the transgender and all that stuff. I've been doing a little bit of research. I myself am not one of those categories, but I've been reading that there are studies being done that there are genetic components to these things, and that people are not made gay by talking about it or whatever at this point I'm really tired, so I'm sort of forgetting half the things I wanted to say, but I'm concerned for my grandchildren, not having books banned. I read a lot of those books, and I have, I'm not consumed by the devil or.
Thank you.
So anyway, thank you, everybody.
Robin Williams on deck.
Michelle Posey from District 3. Yesterday, our governor visited our district and awarded $156,000 to our very own Toledo Blade Elementary School. This was part of the Florida School Recognition Program that awards $200 million to some 1,400 well-deserving schools that received a grade of A rating or the improved 1 performance grade. A whopping 24 Sarasota County School District schools will receive a combined $3.8 million. And it was exciting to see many teachers at Toledo Blade Elementary, their staff, faculty that were excited about the governor's visit. It was great to see Dr. Asplund there. Current board members, Ms. Rose and Ms. Ziegler, were also in attendance, as well as incoming board members Robin Marinelli and Tim Enos. Our community has come together amazingly in the wake of a storm that changed most of our lives to some degree, but I miss not seeing everybody's face there in attendance. The Northport community really needed a boost and something to celebrate. So I wish you all could have attended, but congrats to the 24 Sarasota County schools for being awarded this honor. Thank you.
Teresa DeWitt on deck.
October is LGBTQ History Month, and it should be recognized. We need to learn lessons from history. Before 1933, homosexual acts were illegal in Germany. The law was not consistently enforced, and there was a thriving gay culture in German cities. But after the Nazis took over in 1933, there was tremendous persecution of the gay community. Gay people were arrested and put into concentration camps. The Nazi regime considered the elimination of all manifestations of homosexuality as one of its goals. We need to recognize that, and it's very chilling, the kind of don't say gay law that was passed here in Florida. We need to learn not to discriminate and not to promote homophobia. It has very dangerous past, as in Nazi Germany. Many thousands of homosexual men were arrested. So over 60% died in Nazi concentration camps, and it was at least 60% death rate. A smaller number of men were sentenced to death or executed at Nazi euthanasia centers. We should not be promoting hatred. We need to learn how to get along. We need to have a diverse community. As we saw here with Sarasota, with Hurricane Ian, our diversity is our strength, our helping everybody in our community. So let's learn the lessons of history, and let's recognize LGBTQ history. Thank you.
Lisa Schur on deck.
Hi there. I wanted to speak on behalf of several parents that are actually listening right now. They've tuned in. I have about 150 parent concerns on them not having access to the safest school district in the state. These are some parents that asked me to share their experiences for morning drop-off. The Garden Elementary principal has told a mom for 2 months she cannot walk her child to the class and stated it was a safety issue. We have the Venice Elementary principal told a dad he could not walk his child for safety reasons, and dad laughed and told him to try again. The principal said they really just didn't want to inconvenience the teachers. Again, at Venice today, a resource officer called a parent and said, you can't drop off your child in the same spot starting tomorrow. I have also included my letter that also stated I would not be able to walk my child after 3 days. Bridget, you have been lied to. The problem was getting worse. Actually, the entire board is being lied to. Do you want to know who Mrs. Archer said was responsible for this policy? Dr. Asplund and the board. Did you know the board is being blamed? I want to know who ordered the principals to do this to thousands of parents in July, including me. I pulled my children. Dr. Asplund, do you consider parents a safety risk in this district? Did you not say parents could assist their children at morning drop-off? Parents are watching right now to hear your answer. Someone better do something about this in this district. Did you say kindness is the theme? This month, this is a horrible way to treat these parents who came back from a major disaster. We now have 6 elementary schools who listed parents as a safety protocol. This is not a coincidence. We have parents willing to come forward and speak with board members if necessary. Again, Dr. Asplund, did you instruct principals to send this communication out? Did any of the board members know this letter was going out? My children have lost their school. And they want to know, and they're 5, they want to know when they can come back.
Thank
you should be ashamed.
Carol Lerner on deck.
As has already been stated, October is LGBTQ History Month, but since we're not allowed to say gay in any of our public schools in the free state of Florida, I guess we aren't going to celebrate it in the Sarasota County School District this year. The original observance of this holiday was created by a history teacher in Missouri in 1994 to celebrate the history and diversity of the queer community. How fitting is that, since we're not allowed to teach the true history of this country in the free state of Florida either? As many have commented, this legislation was an unneeded solution in search of a problem. So now we'll spend the next few years litigating to return civil rights to those disenfranchised by the Don't Say Gay and anti-woke legislation. For those worried about escalating legal fees, in the words of the 70s rock group Bachman-Turner Overdrive, you ain't seen nothing yet. In the meantime, the attacks continue on our public school teachers. The Florida Department of Education, under the inept leadership of Senator Manny Diaz, who is deep in the pocket of the for-profit charter school conglomerate Academica, recently released proposed amendments to DOE Rule 6A-10.081. Under these amendments, teachers will be subject to the loss of their teaching certification if they're deemed to have provided classroom instruction to students in K-3 on sexual orientation or gender identity. Of course, just like the Parents' Rights Don't Say Gay legislation that it relates back to, both the legislation and the rules are so vaguely worded as to have a substantial chilling effect on teachers' abilities to teach and to do their jobs. But then again, That was always the intent of this solution without a problem. That plus the plan to kill public education.
Carol Lerner. I also would like to honor LGBTQ plus History Month. I left my copy on the printer, so I'm going to ad-lib this, so bear with me. I was curious as to what the history of the rainbow flag, the rainbow symbol, was. The symbol that has been removed from so many classrooms that were put up by teachers who wanted to convey that it was a safe place for LGBTQ students. Well, it turns out that the person who designed it, his name was Gilbert Baker. He was from Kansas. He was drafted in the Army and ended up in San Francisco. When he finished, he remained in San Francisco. In 1970, he met Harvey Milk, who later, that was 1970, in 73, he became the first openly gay man to be elected to a major public position. Mr. Milk suggested to Mr. Baker, who was also a gay man, that he develop a positive symbol alongside the inverted pink triangle symbol, which the gay community adopted, which had been what the Nazis had used to label anyone that they thought was a sexually deviant person. And as Robin mentioned, most of those folks were exterminated in concentration camps. I found it interesting what the different colors, originally there were 8 colors and then it settled down to 6, but this is what it meant. Hot pink represented sexuality, red, life, orange, healing, yellow, sunlight, green, nature, turquoise, art, indigo, harmony, and violet, spirit.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that concludes comments.
And that is a wrap for tonight. Thank you all for being here. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to congratulate the school system for its $3.8 million in getting its achievements in A for their A grade, and also to let the public know that I was in Northport on Tuesday when we needed help for our employees who had employee assistance. So I did not notice any other board members or board member elects there that day, but thank you for pointing that out to us.
Thank you. Good night.